Hey there, class. It's Phil McDowell, the mortgage professor, coming to you again today. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about that opportunity for you to get out into the great outdoors, the wilderness, the urban setting, talking about buying out in the country. Now, there's a couple issues that you should be aware of before you go out and buy in the country, and that is, you know how you can go home now, turn on the hot water, turn on the cold water, flush the toilets, and everything seems to work okay? Well, country living doesn't quite have that kind of stuff going for it. So when you go take a look at that kind of property, the big thing to look at is water. Water is the essential of life. Now, what's this about water? Well, obviously, you could find a rural setting where it's actually a rural subdivision where they've got cooperative water, and it's almost like being in the city. That's cool. But what if it's not? What if it's actually one of these places where they bore a hole into the ground, look for the aquifer, and there's the water? Now, you may be saying, okay, well, I'm not going to buy something that's brand new that I have to go hunt for the water myself. I'm going to buy a property that's already got a well. Well, just because that well is there, and just because you may see some water in the house, doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the clear just yet. And why is that? Well, part of it is, if you've got a well, obviously the water is coming from underground. What is far down the road? Why, there could be a cattle pen. What do cattle do? They crap all over the ground. And when the ground gets wet, rain, snow, what happens to things that are on the ground? Water comes, it percolates down, gets into the aquifer or the water system. It may travel along and find your well. So one of the things that you're going to be looking at is the water quality. The quality. Two parts. One is you want to know what kind of organic material. Talk about those cows again. But also the mineral content, also known as hard water. So you're going to be looking for some tests, both for the organic and the mineral content, to make sure that that water, even though the well was drilled years ago, and it may have been good years ago, things change. So you want to check out the quality of the water. The other thing is the quantity of the water. Just because you can see water going now, what happens if that house has a cistern? In other words, a holding tank where they truck the water in. You're going to want a current well test to make sure that water is percolating up, getting to you so that you've got enough water that it's not just a glass a week of water. Because if you don't have water, makes life miserable. And if you're trucking it in all the time, life can be miserable, especially in the wintertime when that truck can't get to your house because you're more than knee-deep in snow. So, water quality and water quantity, those are all things to worry about. The other thing is, take a look at the septic. When you flush that toilet, and there's that holding tank, and you've got that area where water is being dispersed, well, one of the things to check for is not only the original report about the septic tank going in, but the municipal guidelines, the rural county. Check with them to find out if they've got guidelines for a septic, because you may find that your septic is not compliant. What does that mean? Well, it could be $13,000 or more to make your septic a compliant way to flush the toilet. So, water quality, quantity, septic. The other thing to take a look at is, what is your access to the property? Is the road going up to your property actually yours? Has it been created as a right-of-way, or is it just a gentleman's agreement with someone next door? Key issue, because if the gentleman next door doesn't like you, and it's on his property, could say, hey, find your own road. The other thing is utilities. One utility you may not be thinking about is internet. Do you have access and secure access to internet, especially if you've got a home-based business? That could be a real ringer for you. If you were looking and saying, hey, there's a tower over there, obviously I've got signal, and you don't test it out, you don't confirm that you've got access to it, you could be out of business until you get back into town. So Those are some issues with rural property. But also, when you're taking a look at rural property, the financing is a little bit more difficult. And the reason for it is what happens if it's zoned agricultural. A lot of lenders are going to say, hey, no, 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 we want a rural subdivision residential. So land use, big issue when it comes to if you're going to have a whole bunch of financing options available or just very limited ones. And the other thing is most of the lenders are going to take a look at the amount of land that you've got, probably designate and say, look, we don't care if you bought 160 acres. We just want to know about the 5 acres around your house, and the other 155 acres you can pay cash for. Ooh. Now, outbuildings. Hey, you got a house, you got a garage. That's what you see in the city. That's what you get in most residential financing. So that Quonset hut, those sheds, those stables, that barn, pay cash. Fencing even, additional costs, like when you've got something that's surrounding one massive big yard, that's a lot of dollars for fencing. But because that's not normal to the city, remember those city bankers? They're looking for a normal city. So, rural property, great idea, great outdoors, join the coyotes and the cougars, but recognize that there's going to be a couple more issues that you should be familiar with before you buy.